The creature hit the clinic wall with a dull thud, leaving a dent in the composite paneling. Its massive paws clawed weakly at the air before it slumped, panting and bleeding, onto the examination platform. Dr. Kell roared in alarm, 6 of his limbs jerking backward in reflex. He stumbled into the tray of sterilized tools, knocking them to the floor with a clatter. "What is that thing?" he shrieked, voice pitching 2 octaves higher than usual. Nathan Myers stepped through the doorway, his left arm wrapped in a makeshift sling made from his jacket. Blood soaked through the fabric on his side, and his brow was slick with sweat. Still, he managed a weary smile. "That's Brute," he said, gesturing toward the collapsed beast. "Relax, he's harmless and spoiled." Kell stared at the creature. It resembled a lupine, but its proportions were wrong, too broad in the shoulders, too long in the snout. Black fur clumped around open bite wounds and ragged claw marks across its flank. One eye was half closed, crusted with blood and dirt. Even unconscious, the animal radiated raw menace. "Harmless?" Kell's dorsal ridge twitched with panic. "That's a Kargan stock beast. I've only seen one dissected, and it took 6 armored handlers to bring it in." Nathan let out a rough cough and leaned against the wall, sliding down to the floor. "Yeah, he's got a nasty look, but he's just a big baby. He panicked when I got caught in the rock slide. Must have gone feral trying to fight off the scavengers." Kell's upper limbs fluttered nervously. "You brought a wounded apex predator into my clinic. Bleeding. Unrestrained." "Yup," Nathan said, blinking slowly, "because if I didn't, he'd be dead." Kell opened his mouth to object, then looked at Brute again. The beast's sides heaved with labored breaths. Its wounds were deep but not yet fatal. Several were still oozing. The claw gashes along its left flank had exposed bone. Kell's instinct said to run. His professional oath said otherwise. With a resigned groan, he buzzed the intercom. "Prep Bay 3, I need binding gel, bone foam, and a containment field. And alert security. Bring the heavy stun lances." Nathan chuckled, then winced and gritted his teeth. "Good call, but don't poke him unless he wakes up angry. He's touchy about strangers." Security arrived within minutes. 2 towering guards clad in riot armor, stun lances humming. Kell donned his surgical harness and approached Brute with measured steps. The containment field shimmered into place, pulsing violet around the creature's form. "Vitals are unstable," Kell muttered, scanning the readings on his wrist pad. "Heart rate elevated, toxins in the bloodstream. He's going septic." "Do whatever you need," Nathan said, voice faint. He slumped sideways and exhaled sharply. "Just don't let him die." Kell blinked at him. "You're bleeding internally." "Yeah," Nathan said, eyes closing. "That's probably not ideal." He lost consciousness before the medics arrived. When Nathan woke, the room was dim and quiet, except for the soft hum of a rehydration unit beside the bed. His ribs ached with every breath, and his arm was immobilized in a pressure cast. A diagnostic screen above him showed a scan of his abdomen. 2 cracked ribs, minor liver bruising, no major organ damage. He turned his head slowly. "Brute?" a voice answered from the corner. "Stable. He's in containment, still sedated." Kell stepped into view, a pair of dark blotches staining his uniform. "I had to seal 3 arterial bleeds and reconstruct part of his shoulder." "He'll live," Kell said, eyes narrowed. "Barely." Nathan exhaled in relief. "Thanks." Kell's dorsal plates bristled. "Don't thank me. I've never operated on a Kargan. I had to consult 12 anatomy charts during the surgery and 3 off-world vet boards. Do you have any idea how many regulations this violates?" "Probably a lot," Nathan said, voice raspy. "But you did it anyway." Kell folded 2 arms across his thorax. "Why?" Nathan blinked at him. "Why what?" "Why risk your life for that thing? You're not Kargan. You're not even bonded with it." Nathan shifted uncomfortably. "Brute saved my life, twice. Once from a sandmon nest, once from a pirate ambush. I didn't bond with him. He just stuck around. Started sleeping at my door. I guess he decided I was part of his pack." Kell's antennae twitched. That's not normal behavior. Neither is dragging a half-ton predator into a sterile clinic, Nathan said, smiling faintly. But here we are. Brute's recovery was slow. The stock beast didn't regain consciousness for 2 days. When he did, it was with a sudden, violent thrash that shattered the containment field. Kel screamed and retreated behind a reinforced door. Brute staggered to his feet, blood-stained gauze trailing from his side. The guards raised their stun lances, but Nathan, still weak and pale, pushed himself between them. "Easy," he whispered, voice hoarse. "Brute, it's me." The beast froze, his single unbandaged eye locking onto Nathan's face. For a moment there was only tense, crackling silence. Then Brute whimpered and collapsed again, head resting against Nathan's leg. Kel poked his head through the door. "You're insane." Nathan chuckled weakly. "Maybe, but he's not." Kel made a noise somewhere between disgust and reluctant admiration. Over the next week, Nathan's wounds began to knit. He was downgraded from critical to stable, then to monitored mobility. His ribs were braced, his arm freed from the cast, but still limited in movement. Brute, meanwhile, developed an intense distrust of any medical staff. He refused treatment unless Nathan was present. Twice, Kel nearly lost a limb trying to administer antibiotics. Eventually, he gave in and let Nathan help with the process. "Hold the injector steady," Kel instructed, handing Nathan the device. Nathan knelt beside Brute. "All right, big guy. Time for another shot." Brute growled low, but didn't move. Nathan pressed the injector to his side and fired. The beast flinched, then relaxed again. Kel stared. "He let you do that?" "Of course," Nathan said. "He trusts me." Kel tilted his head. "That's statistically unprecedented." Nathan shrugged. "Guess he's just spoiled." Kel began documenting everything. He filed reports to the Interstellar Veterinary Guild, citing unusual behavioral loyalty patterns. He even requested an ethics review on domestication potential for apex fauna. But throughout it all, he never let Brute out of his sight. Too many things could go wrong with a predator like that. Too many variables. But Brute never attacked again. He ate what Nathan fed him. He slept curled on the padded recovery mat. When Nathan was wheeled in for his daily checkup, Brute whined until the door opened and then pressed his massive head gently into Nathan's lap. Kel watched this with a mix of terror and awe. "Are you sure he's not telepathic?" he asked one morning. "Nope," Nathan said, stroking Brute's fur. "Just a big softy." Kel muttered something about revisionist biology and went back to his notes. 2 weeks passed. Brute's wounds had closed, though patches of fur were still missing. The fractures in his shoulder blade had fused, and with daily physical therapy, he began to bear weight again. Nathan's recovery was slower. His ribs ached with every cough, and the torn ligaments in his arm made lifting anything heavier than a cup painful. He kept pushing through, though not for himself, but for Brute. "He won't finish therapy unless I'm there," Nathan explained, limping beside the beast during a treadmill session. "He's manipulating you," Kel said. "Probably," Nathan admitted, "but at least he's walking again." By the end of the 3rd week, Brute could stand unaided. He walked with a limp and growled at any new staff, but he no longer snapped or lunged. Nathan was cleared to return to light duty, though Kel warned him sternly about lifting anything or operating machinery. Brute was officially discharged 2 days later. The clinic staff insisted on a full escort. He left without incident, tail swaying, head held high. Nathan walked beside him, hand resting gently on the beast's back. Kel watched from the doorway, arms folded. "You're both lunatics," he said. Nathan grinned. "Yeah, but we're alive." Kel shook his head. "Next time, just bring in a sick fish." "No promises." Brute vomited on the customs officer's boot. The officer, a lanky Tralaxian with translucent skin and a permanent sneer, recoiled in horror. The bile had a glimmering sheen and sizzled faintly on contact with the metal floor. "Contain that thing," the officer shouted, clambering up onto a baggage scanner. "It expelled acid." Nathan tightened his grip on the leash. It's not acid. He ate a crate of vacuum-sealed nutrient paste this morning. That stuff never sits right. He's a biohazard. Nathan glanced down. He's embarrassed. Brute let out a low groan and curled his tail around one leg. A passing transit worker dropped his tablet and sprinted in the opposite direction. I have a permit, Nathan said, fishing a damp folder from his bag. He flipped it open and held it out, careful to avoid the puddle spreading toward his shoes. Certified non-aggressive, medically cleared, fully tagged. The officer stared at the document, then at Nathan, then at Brute. This is written in crayon. Only the signature, Nathan said. The rest is perfectly legal. The officer snatched the folder with a gloved hand and disappeared into a side room. Nathan took the opportunity to slide Brute out of the main queue and into a shaded alcove, where the beast flopped down with a groan and began licking his teeth. You have the digestion of a trash compactor, Nathan muttered, pulling a cloth from his pack to wipe the fur around Brute's mouth. You can't just eat anything that smells like protein. Brute sneezed wetly and blinked at him. Don't give me that look. You knew what was in that crate. The officer returned 2 minutes later, holding the folder like it was radioactive. This has been escalated to planetary biocontrol. You'll need to wait here until they decontaminate the area. Nathan sighed. He's not a biological weapon. He's a dog-shaped war trauma survivor with bad manners. Wait. Nathan froze. What? The officer squinted at the folder. This permit says he's a therapy animal. He is, Nathan said. For who? Nathan pointed at himself. Me. The officer looked between them again. After a long pause, he tucked the folder under one arm and stepped gingerly over the vomit. I'm flagging your file for high-risk companionship, he said. One more incident, and he's banned from orbital transit. Duly noted, Nathan replied. Brute sneezed again and knocked over a sanitation drone. They made it to the shuttle with 3 minutes to spare. The ship was a long-haul freighter, retrofitted for passenger use and still smelled faintly of hydraulic fluid and wet cardboard. Nathan's assigned bunk was wedged between 2 waste processing tanks, and the ceiling hung low enough to bruise his forehead when he stood too fast. Brute barely fit through the hatch. He ended up sprawling across both bunks and a third of the corridor, tail thumping against the wall whenever someone passed. A Karathi merchant carrying a stack of beetle silk scarves stopped and scowled. Is that breathing obstruction permanent? No, Nathan said. But it's opinionated. The merchant muttered something and retreated. Brute huffed and rolled onto his side, nearly dislodging the floor panel. I missed the clinic already, Nathan said, rubbing his temples. Brute yawned, revealing molars the size of Nathan's thumb. The intercom crackled. All passengers secure belongings and prepare for transition to slip space. Estimated duration 26 hours. Meals will be distributed at third shift. Nathan leaned back against Brute's flank and closed his eyes. The engines rumbled to life, and the ship began to hum with the low-frequency vibration of approaching displacement. Wake me up if you hear screaming, he said. Brute burped. 6 hours later, Nathan was awoken by a screaming child and the unmistakable sound of someone retching into a storage bin. He groaned, sat up, and reached for the water flask tied to Brute's harness. The beast was snoring, tongue lolling sideways, one paw twitching in a dream. Nathan took a sip, stood carefully, and made his way toward the galley. The corridor was dim, lit only by pulsing blue strips that flickered with each phase shift. He passed a pair of crew members arguing over cargo weights, a maintenance bot dragging a broken panel, and a vending unit that refused to accept his credits. Figures, he muttered, kicking it lightly. Need to borrow a crowbar? Asked a voice behind him. He turned to see a woman in a pilot's jacket, carrying a bag of freeze-dried noodles and a thermal mug. Her hair was tied in a series of practical knots, and one of her eyebrows had a scar running through it at a sharp angle. Depends. You offering to help, or join the machine uprising? She grinned. I'm off duty, just here for the entertainment. Nathan gestured at the vending unit. This thing owes me a meal. She leaned over and punched a sequence into the keypad. It clattered, whined, and spat out a packet of synth jerky. Pilot override, she said, handing it to him. Name's Callan. Nathan, thanks. You the guy with the walking nightmare? He's recovering. Kellen raised an eyebrow. From what, a nap? Nathan tore open the jerky. He had a rough month. You brought a Kargan stalker on a public shuttle? That's not rough. That's a threat display. He chewed slowly. He's house-trained. Callan laughed. You're serious? Nathan nodded. He's also been stabbed, shot, crushed, and nearly starved. Still hasn't bitten anyone. Callan sipped from her mug. Yet, they walked back toward the sleeping quarters, passing a group of gamblers whispering around a makeshift dice game. Someone had drawn a crude sketch of Brute on the wall with the words, "Do not pet," underlined 3 times. As they reached Nathan's corridor, Brute stirred. His ears twitched, then his head lifted. He sniffed the air and let out a low, questioning chirp. Yeah, Nathan said, dropping the jerky on the bunk. I met a person. Try not to act so surprised. Callan approached slowly, eyes fixed on Brute. Can I? Nathan shrugged. If you value your fingers, maybe wait until he decides. The Brute stretched, stood, patted over, and sniffed her boots. After a moment, he nudged her leg and flopped down at her feet. Callan blinked. Well, that's unsettlingly polite. Nathan picked up a grooming brush from his pack and began combing out a patch of matted fur. He's just assessing if you'd make a decent pillow. Do I? You're warm and flat-footed. He's into that. Brute let out a satisfied grunt and curled up again. Callan crouched beside him. I've flown combat runs over nebulae that were less unpredictable than this creature. Nathan looked up. You a military pilot? Used to be. Now I shuttle mining equipment and play cards with malfunctioning bots. Brute rolled onto his side and snored. Callan chuckled. Hard to believe he used to eat people. He still might, Nathan said, just not today. The rest of the trip passed without incident, unless one counted the incident with the upside-down luggage rack, which Nathan insisted didn't count because Brute had been panicking in his sleep. They docked at the orbital station above Coven Prime just after second shift the next day. Nathan strapped on his pack, adjusted Brute's travel harness, and followed the disembarking crowd into the customs chamber. A squad of peacekeepers stood flanking the exit, scanning arrivals with handheld spectrometers. One of them motioned to Nathan. Declaration of species, please. Nathan handed over a different folder, this time laminated, embossed, and signed with an actual stylus. The officer flipped through it, glanced at Brute, and tapped a code into his scanner. The device beeped once, then again. This unit pings as high-risk fauna. You'll need to check in with local wildlife control within 36 hours. Already scheduled, Nathan said. We're here for a behavioral study. The officer narrowed his eyes. Of what? Compassion, Nathan replied. Brute sneezed again, narrowly missing a passing diplomat. The officer handed the folder back. Good luck. Nathan grinned. We make our own. They stepped into the artificial sunlight of the station promenade, Brute's claws clicking against the polished floor. Passengers gave them a wide berth. A child waved. Brute tilted his head, then wagged his tail once. Callan caught up to them near the lift tubes. You still planning to walk that monster through a research dome? Only if I can find someone willing to let me in. She handed him a card. Talk to Dr. Vesh on Deck 6. He owes me 3 favors and a new coat. Nathan took the card. What happened to the coat? Brute's cousin happened, Callan said, then winked. Don't get eaten. Brute burped again. Nathan sighed. No promises. It was late afternoon station time when Nathan and Brute stepped off the lift onto Deck 6. The air smelled faintly of ozone and citrus disinfectant, the kind that lingered in research sectors. A sanitation drone swerved to avoid Brute's tail, then promptly shorted out on a wall panel. Friendly place, Nathan muttered, brushing fur off his jacket. A large glass door ahead bore the etched emblem of the Interdisciplinary Cognition Institute, its letters scrolling in 5 languages. A retinal scanner blinked to life as they approached, but paused when it registered Brute. Don't breathe on that, Nathan said, lifting the beast's snout away. A voice crackled from a recessed speaker. State your business. Callan sent me. I've got a behavioral subject for Dr. Vesh. Brute sneezed twice and sat down, blocking the entire doorway. The speaker paused, then buzzed. Enter, quickly. Inside, the lab was a mess of floating data panels, tangled sensor webs, and a smell like overripe fungus. A squat figure with elongated eye ridges and a scowl that seemed permanent shuffled into view, wearing a lab coat 2 sizes too long. I'm Vesh, he said, ducking under a hanging scanner. You brought the canine war engine? He's not a war engine, Nathan replied. He's a trauma case. Vesh walked a slow circle around Brute, muttering. Tissue regrowth complete. Scar tissue minimal. Gates suggests only residual stiffness in the left rear limb. Impressive recovery. I've been doing the rehab myself. He doesn't like strangers poking him. Understandable. Neither do I. Vesh turned to a console and tapped in several commands. What's your intent? Observation. I want to prove he's safe around controlled stimuli, that he can adapt outside combat environments. Vesh raised an eyebrow flap. You're attempting to demonstrate cognitive reintegration in a Kargon-class apex? Baru licked his wrist. Vesh stared at the slobber. You're either brilliant or suicidal. Nathan shrugged. Bit of both? Vesh sighed, then gestured to a side hallway. We have a simulation chamber, 70 square meters, adjustable terrain, audio masking. If he gets aggressive, containment foam deploys in under 3 seconds. He won't. Vesh snorted. They all say that. The chamber was a dome-shaped room with a soft textured floor and walls lined with holo-projectors. As soon as they entered, the lights dimmed and a gentle forest scene flickered into existence. Brute sniffed the air and padded forward, ears twitching. Nathan crouched beside him. Ready to show them you're more than teeth? Brute let out a rumble low in his chest and began sniffing the projected underbrush. Vesh watched from the control room, fingers hovering over the emergency lockdown. We'll begin with low-level stimuli, no threats. A small simulated creature bounded into view, something resembling a 6-legged rodent with bright plumage. Brute's head snapped toward it. Nathan tensed but said nothing. Brute stepped forward once, twice, then stopped. The creature skittered past him. He watched it go, then sat back down. Vesh blinked. He didn't pursue. Told you. Next tier stimuli. Avian burst pattern. A flock of simulated birds exploded from the treetops. Brute flinched but didn't move. He turned his head to follow, ears swiveling, then yawned. Stress markers are dropping, Vesh murmured. He's not reacting defensively. Nathan grinned. He's adapting. He knows it's not real. Vesh adjusted the settings. Last test. Simulated humanoid. No weapons, neutral posture. A projection of a humanoid figure appeared among the trees, walking slowly, hands visible. Brute rose and approached cautiously. The projection stopped. Brute sniffed the air, circled twice, then sat beside it. When it didn't move, he pawed at the ground and lay down. Face leaned back. I've seen trained security units with less restraint. Nathan offered Brute a strip of dehydrated fish. Good boy. Vesh entered the chamber 5 minutes later, carrying a scanner. Brute stood but didn't growl. He watched Vesh carefully, then sat again. This is not instinct, Vesh said, scanning Brute's vitals. This is learned behavior. He's had to learn. The wild wouldn't take him back, and the galaxy doesn't want him unless he fits in. Vesh looked up. And he chose you? Nathan nodded. I didn't ask him to. He just stayed. Vesh turned off the scanner. I'll file an official report. You'll be cleared for public habitat zones pending standard leash protocols and weekly check-ins. That's all? Vesh frowned. You expected resistance? Honestly, I thought I'd have to bribe someone. Vesh's eye ridges twitched. You still might. But not me. That evening they returned to the public section of the station. Brute walked with a steady, controlled gait, tail low, eyes alert but relaxed. Passers-by gave them space, but no one screamed or ran. Nathan stopped at a food stall and ordered a bowl of salted root strips and a fried protein curl. Brute waited beside him, ignoring the scent of grilled meat in the air. The vendor, a wrinkled hadron with one milky eye, leaned forward. "That beast yours?" "Yeah, looks like he's got manners." "He's working on it." The vendor handed over the food. "We had one of those back on my homeworld. Took out 3 raiders before it bled out. Never saw anything like it." Nathan glanced down at Brute. "I've seen what they can survive. Then you've seen what they can feel." Back at their assigned quarters, Nathan checked Brute's bandages. Only one left, covering a patch of still tender skin near the ribs. The fur was growing back in soft, uneven tufts. He applied a layer of dermal salve and rewrapped the area with a fresh strip. "You're nearly there," he said. "No more limping." Brute licked his face once and curled up on the floor mat. The next morning, they met with a council mediator in a glass-walled conference room high above the station's central axis. A representative from the Planetary Immigration Board sat opposite, flanked by 2 quietly humming security drones. "I've reviewed the vet's report," the representative said, "and the behavioral footage. This is unconventional." "I'm not asking for citizenship," Nathan said. "Just a permit to stay. He's not a threat." Brute sat beside him, posture calm. His tail didn't move, and he made no sound. The mediator tapped a stylus against the table. "You're aware this will require monthly evaluation." "Fine. And a full behavioral audit in 6 months." Nathan nodded. "We'll be here." The representative hesitated, then slid a datapad across the table. "Sign here. You're cleared for provisional residency." As they left, the mediator pulled Nathan aside. Most humans would have tried to hide him or abandon him. Nathan looked down at Brute. "I don't do that." Later, on the station's observation deck, they stood together beneath the curved dome of glass, watching freighters drift past the stars. "You know," Nathan said, leaning on the railing, "you're officially the only Kargan-class predator with a public license on this station." Brute rested his head on Nathan's foot. "I guess that makes you a pioneer," he added. A group of children entered the observation deck, chattering in at least 3 languages. One of them pointed at Brute and whispered. Another stepped forward. "Can I pet him?" Nathan glanced down. Brute's ears were up, eyes calm. He gave a single, short tail thump. "Go ahead," Nathan said carefully. "Just the shoulder." The child reached out, touched the thick fur, then grinned. "He's soft." Brute blinked slowly and let his tongue loll out. The other children gathered around. Nathan crouched beside him. "You earned this, big guy." Brute yawned and lay down, surrounded by laughter.